Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a March 23rd, the MSP Initiative Live. Special guest today, probably needs no introduction, Rob Ray. We're going to get into some good stuff with him in a moment. Just going to do some quick housekeeping with you guys as we always try and get this stuff out of the way in the beginning of the session. Gives us room to, have a cool chat and, kind of let everybody jump into the mix. So without further ado, here's that housekeeping. So mspinitiative.com. Here's our new website. You can find everything about us here. All of our sessions, including this session that you're at right now, is being recorded, will be under the sessions tab. We're doing an event later on in the year in August where we're bringing in industry experts and doing a completely free event for MSPs so that you can get access to experts that otherwise would cost you money and have more time with them than just a breakout session at a conference. So check that out. We'll be talking more about that in a little while. We have our community block parties. We just finished one in London this Monday, which is actually pretty cool. Love to bring that back overseas since we haven't really been over there since 2018. But there are more coming this year, so stay tuned. We'll announce them. And then we have some community offers for vendors that have just raised their hand and say, hey, can I throw a special offer out there for the people in MSP land? Sure, throw it on there. And then lastly, industry calendar. Kind of did what everybody else did. All the homework we do before the year starts, we dumped it all in one place so that you can compare and contrast, make sure you know what's going on, and plan your calendars accordingly. So that is all of the housekeeping. Now you know it, mspinitiative.com. And without further ado, the one, the only, Mr. Rob Ray. How you doing, Rob?
George, I'm wonderful. How are you doing, sir?
For the first time in like 90 days, I went on a trip and came back, and I'm not like, blowing my nose and taking all sorts of medication. I don't know. Maybe finally all of the meds like kicked in at once and like I feel okay, but as a guy that's traveled a bit yourself, sure you can imagine between hot and cold and between different time zones and lack of sleep, and then, throw a little bit of walking in the bar in there. That's a recipe for the flu.
Sleep deprivation, airplane hygiene, all those things. Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? Bang on. We did, I'm sure you were there. We did like 3 weeks in a row without going home at all. It was like we were in Cancun and then up to Orlando and all that. Finally got home. You're just so bloody exhausted, but then 2 days later turning around and going off again. But you're right. Yeah. Actually, I just came back from Denver and I feel great today, which is maybe we got all the bugs. We finally got rid of them all for the.
Yeah, I was like, I think the urgent care by me saw me on a regular and they're like, didn't we just, I was like, yep, need more. And they're like, what do you do for work? And I kind of like try to explain it and they're like, that's a lot of flights. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of part of the thing. So
a lot of handshaking. It's a lot of licking of floors. Yes.
Yeah. And like, you don't have enough hand sanitizer to go around. So you just give up on that a little bit.
But there was a guy way back in the day, who'll remain nameless, but every time he shook your hand, he would then go right to the hand sanitizer. And you kind of feel like, these days it kind of makes sense a little bit. Like you can get away with the pandemic. Back then, not so much. And it kind of felt like, oh, but do you really feel like I'm that kind of dirty that you need to sanitize after each time?
It's a little bit weird, right?
it's a little bit odd. It's a little bit odd, but yeah, I agree. So I try to.
Sandy popped in and said the benefits of being doorknob lickers.
Great title for this session. How about that?
There you go. Maybe we'll use that. Well, I mean, at one point everybody was doing the elbow thing back in the day, and like that didn't last for like any time, right? That disappeared overnight. But yeah, you got to do the handshake for sure.
I don't know if you do the same thing, but for me, it's actually quite simple. I shake hands and open doors and do everything that's like touchable with this hand, and if I have to, I'll eat with this hand. Otherwise, it's like. And, I've kind of developed that. Like if I have an itch on my face, it's this hand that goes as opposed to this one, because this one's my germy hand. This one is not. It's stupid. Wash your hands. Wash your hands.
If you can be really like religious about that, that could work.
It just takes time for your brain to develop those things. But yeah.
Awesome. So obviously, we know Rob Ray and Dado, the story was a long and awesome journey and a lot of cool things happened.
Very much so.
Like now that you've kind of turned the corner, if you were to reflect on your time at Dado as a whole, right? Like, hey, starting up and like awesome accords at the booth and like you're having to reinvent the story to, hey, that the last DadoCon Swan song, like pulled it off DC. That's a long journey. Like if you were to think of the top couple of things that like you're proud of, what comes to mind?
Wow. There's a lot of things there. And by the way, like that was an absolutely incredible journey and an absolutely incredible team. There's a lot of really, really smart people. I'm blessed enough that I got a lot of a lot of the guys that are still kicking around Dado. We are all blessed that we got the opportunity to be the face of that, because there are so many incredible people that did such incredible work in the background and still continue to. If I'm going to say top 3 moments, a lot of them tend to be Austin McCord related, which kind of sucks. But I remember there was a moment where I want to say it was DataCon 2016, and 2016 specifically, because I remember it was in Nashville, Tennessee, and we were going to the after party, and we had just kind of executed, kind of like in our mind, a really, really successful DataCon. And I'm sitting on the bus with them going over to wherever the hell party, bar, whatever it was. And I said to him, Joe Pediteri had just written a story, top 10 things that Austin McCord did to get Dado to where it was. And number 1 was like start the company and use his credit card to fund it. Number 2 was hire me. So I turned to Austin, and if you guys have ever had an opportunity to meet him, he consumes everything very quickly all the time. So I know, even though the article was published 30 seconds ago, I know he's already read it and consumed it and processed it, because that's just what he does. So I said to him, I said, hey, did you see Joe Peditteri's article? And he's like, yeah. And I said, did you see, like, I was like, hiring me was like the second best thing you ever did? And he's like, you're number 2. Get over yourself. I'm like, oh man.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like that one.
There's a few other moments like that, just, where we have these moments about talking the direction of the future, and then you look back at them and you think, it was such a pivotal time on the direction that we went. It just there's a few moments in there where I was panicking, like when we started that fire in Australia, and I thought for sure I was going to lose my job. Turns out it becomes one of the best stories that we could tell on the road, and people appreciated it. So it's just, little things like that. It's part of being a startup, right? Especially one that is growing very, very quickly. So for us.
So you guys do have the ability to pop in here, right? So it sounds like Steve is unmuted. I'm gonna mute him real quick just in case he didn't know he was on there. But yeah, guys, it's an open session. So
yeah, these people with no manners, George. I can't believe you let them on.
Nah, come on, Keith. We let you on. Come on.
Yeah, if they're gonna let Keith on, they're gonna let anybody on.
Yeah, no, we love everybody popping on. Thanks for coming on, Keith. Rob, there's, I guess, different schools of thought, right? And the size of the company maybe plays a big part of how do you determine as a company, like, who the face, the outwardly spokesperson for your company is. And I would say that in today's day and age, if you talk to all the marketing gurus and like the people who are really good at branding and social media and all that stuff, like having a personality attached to your corporate brand is super important, right? Because otherwise it gets a little bit of lost, right? Like people with humans and all that other stuff. But is there like, if you were to say, and I know that you brought a lot of people up through your journey, right? At Dado and even before Dado, like what's the criteria of like picking the right person? So when Austin McCord said, I need Rob Ray, right? Number 2 thing he ever did, according to Joe Pediteri, when he was at Dado, like, what's the criteria you would use if you were starting a company today and wanted to attach a personality as the face of the company?
Yeah, it goes back, people like to do business with people they like. And it's really hard to associate, and you kind of mentioned it in there. It's hard to associate an organization with an individual. And I think there's a ton of individuals, there's a ton of characters in our space. We know them all, right? And there are those that we know hold some credibility, and there's those that we know that do not hold some credibility, but everybody's still hanging around and still able to stay gainfully employed. That being said, I think that, for me, when I've looked at this, and it's arguably that there's a lot of channel chiefs that are in this business that used to work for me, that I like to think that I've personally had some level of impact on their career or how they work. I grew up and got to know my channel chief role listening to Dan Wensley. Dan Wensley will By the way, is this the CEO of ScalePad now? He will apologize for he says it this exact way. I apologize for all the people I've littered in the MSP space over the years. I'll actually do the same, except, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke because there's a lot of those individuals that are with a lot of different vendors out there. And again, when I look for these people or who am I looking for, it's people that genuinely care about this channel and genuinely care about this ecosystem. If they are putting, I get a lot of attention, I get a lot of positive impact. And I still to this day don't understand why, because I still think I'm one of the dumbest guys on this planet. But for some people for some reason, people like me, so I'll take advantage of it. But you'll always identify me with the organization that I work for, because the organization that I work for is always more important than my brand. However, you have to constantly portray that you care, and you have to have a genuine caring for this space, for the MSPs that are in it, for the vendors that are in it, how we all work together, because it's a house of cards. It could fracture at any time. And I think, when I first started in IT, I started in enterprise hardware. And back then, the level of trust between the channel and its vendors was zero. So, building that trust is so critical. It's like any relationship that you've got. As soon as you do something to break that trust or do something nefarious, it's over, right? You can't recover from that. So it's this constant ongoing battle. Like any relationship that you value, preserve it, keep it, care for it, nurture it, do the little things, look for little things to do. And that you'll find that a lot of characters in this space that do this really, really well do all those things.
Rob, you forget one thing. It's integrity and valuing people comes from the top. And you present that. Shit happens. Things are going to go bad. Things are going to break. That's the business we're in. And that's why we make those big bucks. But a company that has the integrity, the honesty, the approachability and that you represent, I think is huge.
But you're absolutely right, Keith. But that I've been empowered to do that as well, which is, also the critical part about it. Your organization really has to care, and I've been very fortunate that over the years I've worked for a number of really, really awesome people that have enabled me to go out there and be that person as well. So you're absolutely right.
So I lost track on the number of times per day, per week, per month that you were tagged in some sort of social media thread somewhere. Did you do all of that by yourself, or was there like a person behind the person?
No, absolutely not. I don't understand it. All I did was change my so I left my last job on October 31st, and I took 3 months. I was planning on taking a little bit longer, but I took 3 months off work. And all I did, because MSPs were still reaching out to me, asking for some help. I wanted to let the market know that I wasn't there, but I also didn't want to make this big grandiose, like, hey, look at me, I'm not here anymore, because that's just not my personality. So all I did was just change my end date on LinkedIn. And for some reason, a reporter picked up on it, and then more reporters picked up on it. And then for some reason, it just became news. George, I don't understand why, but people like it. I don't know. Maybe we're just starving for so much content in the MSP world. Maybe we need some level of reality show about MSP vendor crap or something like that. I don't know. Maybe there's something missing here that people need something to talk about. Slow news day, something. So that's all. I think that's all that it was. No, I don't have this contrived PR team working behind me. It's literally sitting in my office looking at my dogs all day. So.
Well, it sounds like you got a lot of messages per day. Well, what was the most number of social media tags that you can remember in a day? 10, 5, 100?
Oh, no, thousands. No. Yeah. Like for myself?
Yeah.
Oh, no, thousands. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that takes a lot to keep up with for sure, but we know you probably like your cell phone. You had a unique opportunity, I think, in between Dado and now PAX8 to work with a lot of vendors, maybe at a lower level, like to help, consult with them, right? Give them some advice, evaluate stuff for them, that kind of thing. I'm curious, like, did you take anything away that you were surprised with during that time? Because I think you got to work with a lot of them in a short window. Yep. Did you find anything that you were like, I never thought about that because, maybe I wasn't looking at things from this view, or Did anything correlate across those experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a few kind of learning opportunities or a few experiences that I had through there. I think easy stuff. So when I look at there's a lot of people that are very entrepreneurial. You are one of those people, George, 100%. There's a lot of the MSPs that are on this call that are very entrepreneurial. I am not. I am not creative enough, or I'm too risk adverse to want to go and try to do something myself out of complete fear of failure. But one of the things that I have been really good at is finding things that are appreciated, and then being able to potentially take that to market, and that's what I found with data. So for me, I'm thinking, okay, so I had great success doing this over the last 9.5 years. I want to do something new. I want to go find that next kind of technology. In my mind, technology. I don't want to start it myself. I want to be able to go in and help somebody that has this thing that just is underappreciated, and I want to get the appreciation level on it. And then you got to vet through it. There's a number of things, like how committed to are they the channel? Are they, then do they have a pathway to success via, like, are they going to be revenue generating? All these types of questions that you can ask. So in my mind, I just start looking for the next data, not that tech, but tech that is underappreciated, that the MSP channel needs to know more about. When I joined the backup space, if you remember this, there was probably about, I don't know, 20 backup vendors. And we were all kind of on the same path, and there was no horse that separated from the pack. And nobody was telling the right story. And everybody was just kind of like, buy my backup, no, buy my backup, no, buy my backup. There was no kind of rhyme or reason or differentiation to it. There was no personality behind any of it. And people just treated backup the same way. They kind of, like, if you look at AV today, it's kind of all the same. Like, what AV do you want? I don't know. Whatever the cheapest is, it all does the same thing, which is, not accurate or true. There are some that are better than others. There's just nobody telling that story. Anyway, long story short, I'm looking for that kind of tech, but then other opportunities started coming out where it's like, well, maybe you don't want to look at this. Maybe we should do some consulting. Maybe we should do more of a startup type thing. Maybe we should invest in something a little bit different. But there was a lot of people that wanted to partner up with me and run their companies that way. It just, those are things that I didn't expect, and those are the things that I just kind of wasn't open-minded to, at least at the beginning of this journey. But by the end of it, I was like ready to go. PAX8 is an example of that. They call me and say, hey, we want you to take a look at an opportunity here, and I'm like, you guys don't need me. You're not. PAX8 has got a wonderful reputation and just phenomenal people over there that already care about the channel. They're established, they're running, they're moving. They're making a difference. They're getting all the attention. Like, you don't need me. And they're like, absolutely, we do. So, I kind of went at this thinking I'm looking for that startup plus one Datto-esque type company, and ended up basically finding another organization that is just kind of like really ready to take the MSP market to the next level, and giving me an opportunity to help them do that. So I'm just, for me, it just became more about that impact. The other really cool thing throughout that time was that I did a lot of consulting work for some private equity companies and people that are trying to invest in this space. And it is incredible how much money is still there. We're all talking about layoffs. We're seeing all those things. We're talking about recession. We're seeing all those things. But there's still, and George, you probably have this, there's still an incredible amount of people that want to put an incredible amount of money into this space to grow it. And, there's no shortage of that, seems to be. At least based on the amount of work I was able to do while I was not working.
There's definitely tons of money out there. Like, devil's in the details, right? And how you negotiate with people who are looking to invest. While you were working with some of those people on the other side of the aisle, for lack of a better term, like, there's a little bit of a scariness or a bad guy vibe whenever we bring up the word private equity, venture capital, investors. And you've heard it all, right? I don't need to bring all those things up, but like, when you look at the world from their lens, what are they seeing that we're like, it seems like what they look for and what we see on this side may not be in alignment. Like, how do they see things, and why do they look at things the way that they do?
Well, let's be brutally honest here. Let's have an adult conversation here. All right. you started a business, and I'll just use you as an example here, George, but you're no different than anybody else on this call. You start a business in essence to make a difference, but at the end of the day, you're not a charity. You're doing this to try to put food on your table. And I'm not saying that we all want to be, the billionaires on private islands or anything like that, but we definitely do want to sustain a certain lifestyle for ourselves. And whether that's a few $100 or a few $1,000,000. I mean, that just depends on the individual. But at the end of the day, we start businesses to generate revenue, to provide for ourselves. Hopefully it's something that we're passionate about, and it is a positive service where you can make a positive impact on the people that you provide these services to. Pure and simple. When you look at venture capitalists and private equities, like, they are in essence doing the same thing, but they don't come at it from the perspective of, hey, who is the greatest MSP that's providing the greatest service? They are looking to invest money into the business so you can bolster it, grow it quick, make some more, and then they want to exit. There is no doubt about that. Venture capitalists tend to want to exit faster than private equities do. Private equities are going to hang around a little bit longer, and more so that if you continue to grow, they're going to hang around even longer than that. I think where the challenge comes over the last number of years is that when we were in our dark SMB, MSP reseller corner of the world, the only time, Daddy Warbucks ever walked into our space was to buy something to take it away from us. And you think about all the technologies that you used to use that were born in the MSP or born in the SMB that were acquired by a much larger organization and taken up market into enterprise. And guess what? You can no longer use them, or it's no longer price effective and all those. So, we got a little, as a community, we were like, whenever one of the rich dudes walks in and wants to invest in something, it's usually to take it away from us. That's changed. That's all changed. Like, the investment dollars that are coming into the space aren't because they want to take it up to enterprise or take it direct to end users. It's because they actually do see that you can't do business in the SMB market in a lot of the Western markets without getting some form of MSP acceptance. You have to have a partner program. You got to be able to give them margin. You got to be able to let them control the relationship. You got to let them provide tier 1 support. Otherwise, don't bother coming to the SMB space. And, that's where I think a lot of organizations have realized that. I think that's where a lot of the investors that have the dollars are starting to realize that and have realized that. And I think that's why, we're gun shy about it because of what's happened historically. But I don't think we necessarily need to, as long as you broker the right deal for yourself. I don't think it's necessarily anything we need to be fearful of, because that technology is not disappearing. Instead, it's growing faster with an SMB focus.
But how do you retain I like to say we're not in the technology business. We're in the work process, workflow, people business. We use technology to enhance people's businesses. Once you start diluting that, you could take my company, which is a small little nobody, but there's been big companies that walk into the union and say, we can do it cheaper, but they go, no, we like what we get.
Yep.
And so, in our contracts, it basically calls on certain individuals to be on call for a price because there's that relationship. Yep. And I have this hard time struggling mentally on how you bring that when you start having an angel investor who dilutes my ownership or my value in my company.
Absolutely. So that's not going to come through. That's not going to come through. Like, at the end of the day, like, these folks are looking at balance sheets, right? They're looking at EBITDA. They're looking at those types of things. So you hope that the service that you provide is good enough, and you don't need to be the cheapest. You don't need to be even the most bred. But like, those soft things, Keith, just the qualitative things about the business don't necessarily come in. But the idea is that those qualitative things hopefully translate into quantitative things like revenue, meaning you have such a good reputation about who you are and what you do in your market that more business is going to come to you as a result. Therefore, your top line is going to grow. Therefore, these individuals are going to look at you. But and they do a ton of research too. Trust me, I'm sure they're talking to like consultants and people all the time saying, what do you think of these individuals? And, if you have a bunch of your end user clients that are saying the guy's a scam artist and I'm just with him because I'm stuck in a contract. They're going to hear those things and they're not going to necessarily invest in your business. But you're right. Sometimes a lot of the things that we are passionate about, which tends to be more the GUI side of things, which is like caring for your clients, being available 24/7, giving them your cell phone number. Back in the day, you used to carry a key to their office. Those things sometimes get lost in those larger conversations. But that's, again, it's fine. Just because they're there, just because they're offering it, doesn't mean you have to take it. It's a lot of MSPs that I know, and I hate the term lifestyle business or boutique business, because that's all BS. Like, you run your business based on how you want to run your business, how much money you want to make, and how much time you want to spend on it.
Sandy popped in from earlier and he said, why don't we make a show about Real Housewives of the Channel? I don't know. We'll have to come up with a better title than that. But I got what you said.
Could you imagine anything more uninteresting than watching all of us sit around a freaking bar? Like, that would suck.
But there's some real world stories. Right before we came on, now I'm just Now I only said something online when I got stopped at security versus not, right? Now I'm just like, well, here's exactly what happens. So you guys understand what I have to go through. There's a story there. It's funny.
I'm not, George. I honestly think you bring this upon yourself. I think you bring it upon yourself a couple of different things. First of all, you have to know that every time you bag on TSA, they know you have a flight coming up and you are flagged in the system. And I know that you think that it's because of, you walk in there, but you don't make it easy either, man. Like, keep your head down.
Now, the truth is, anyone that's an Eagles fan is going to get stopped at any security point. That's just a fact.
The Eagles jersey, yeah.
See, you like you bring this upon yourself.
I'm going to start wearing 3-piece suit through security, see what happens.
You know what? Next time, try wearing a Cowboys jersey and see if you have a different experience.
Oh, no. That's blasphemy, man. You can't do that.
You cannot be an American. You just can't bring yourself to do it.
I'd have to lose a pretty serious bet to do that, Rob. Gonna be honest. So let's talk about PAX8 for a second. So
yeah, love to.
Before we get into what's coming up in 80 days, by the way, love the sign behind you. Perfect segue. When you set out to start DataCon way back, I think the original one was in DC, right?
2013. I think you were there.
I was on my way there. I had to turn around and go back, but yes, I was gonna be there. You set out and I think the goal was, and I'm not gonna take words out of your mouth, but you're like, let's create the biggest, best, baddest, event we can make, right? And it's gonna take time, and it's gonna, we need to build it. Nothing happens overnight. Yep. But like, that was a journey, right? And you needed help to do that. Like, I think it takes. I mean, so the bigger ones in the industry have taken decades.
Yep.
So tell me the blueprint that you learned throughout your DataCon building journey. And then let's figure out how that applies to what's coming up in 80 days. Yeah,
absolutely. The DataCon journey was phenomenal. And I remember back in the day, we did our first one. You're absolutely right. It was on September 11th, 2013 in Washington, DC at the Reagan Hotel. It was 100, I want to say there was 160 MSPs and probably about 7 vendor sponsors. And I got in there, we had about 3 months to plan it. There was an old marketing manager that had signed a contract and had left the organization, and I joined, and they said, by the way, we have this big contract and nobody's coming to our party. Can you do something about it? So I begged, borrowed, and stole. I got as many MSPs to it as I possibly could. But the biggest objection that I would get is, why does anybody want to go to a backup conference? That sounds stupid. Why would you want to go to a conference about backup? And this is the thing about, well, that's 10 years ago. So you think about kind of the journey that we've been on in the managed services. It's again, like when you go to these things, when you go to IT Nation, you don't do it because you're going there to talk about PSA, right? As PSA is a good topic, and a lot of people that are going there use that PSA, but it's not about PSA. It's like DataCon wasn't about backup. It's these conferences that, or at least the good ones that are being developed, and user conferences specifically, tend to have a wider scope. And they tend to be very, very forward thinking. And it also, I think probably the most important part is it gives you direct access to the vision and focus of the top level executives of where they're taking these organizations. And we spend so much time and money on picking these solutions, developing these solutions, integrating these solutions, and then ultimately going and selling them to your end users, that for you not to know what the vision and focus of the vendor that you've selected is, that's a big part of it. You can look at price, you can look at features and functionality, but at the end of the day, if you knew that this company wasn't financially healthy, if you knew that this company, didn't have a plan or was going to end of life something that you just bought, those are the types of things that you learn at these partner conferences, these user conferences. And yeah, PAX8 is doing its first one. And yeah, they wanted to do one pre-pandemic and had one all locked and loaded. And then 2020 came around and canceled, so this is kind of their first opportunity. But I think there's some distinct advantages that they've got. And I think, well, first of all, we're going to have 1,000 MSPs in Denver, Colorado. We're going to have, I'm still vetting through vendors, how many vendors are going to be there, but there's going to be probably 60, 70 vendors that are going to be there. Hopefully more. And again, it's an opportunity for the entire community to come together and talk about community things. I think the great part about for PAX8 is, if you look at the disty part of the business, back when I first started up in this space, some of the best events I went to were the Ingram Micro seismic events and the Cynics and Tech Data shows, because the distributors have a distinct advantage where when you go to these conferences, you're not going to see the one technology that you're invested in. You're going to see the entire or most of the stack that you actually use, plus newer technology you haven't seen before, all those types of things. And because, I'm not there pushing more PAX8, that's not a thing. We actually have an opportunity to really invest time on helping MSPs grow their businesses. And we got some really, really cool things. That's the other part about it too, is that the organization's so wanting to evolve fast and continue to push fast and be sexy and awesome and have fun doing it. Like, you're not going to find many better out there in the at least the MSP world that really are investing in this. And I think that's why right out of the gate, even though it's the inaugural event, I think it's going to be successful. And then on top of that, we'll build, exactly like you said, build some momentum on that and just keep doing it year over year over year and just demonstrate not only growth of obviously the conference, but growth of the actual MSP channel.
Rob, I'd like to pay your company a compliment. You have some great assets to start such a conference. Matt Lee is probably one of the people I respect the highest in the entire channel. He's knowledgeable. He shares his knowledge without intimidating others. Too many of us like to sit there and say, we're smarter than you, so you're stupid. He really is superb at sincerely helping. He's got a beautiful heart. He's a wonderful human being. Rex Frank is awesome. Yep. I've known Rex since he was a back office guy for Oli. And he really is another one that cares about people. Yep. And there's another vice president. Rex said, we're at a conference. He goes, this guy will get us a car to the airport. And I drove one of your vice presidents to the airport in a car service. And they really seem to be concerned about fitting into my plan and not forcing yours down my throat. So what I heard from PAX8, I thought was always very encouraging.
I appreciate the feedback, Keith. I wish I could take credit for it, but that's a culture that I just joined 5 weeks ago. But you're absolutely right. It's what attracted me to this organization was the level of depth and caring from all people in the organization, from top to bottom. Matt Lee, you're absolutely right. And this goes back to what we were originally talking about before, George, which is, hiring people that, you would want representing your organization. There's not many better than Matt Lee, because he has a beautiful heart and cares very much about the MSP, cares very much about MSP growth and education. Rex, I'll give you, Rex is phenomenal too. I've known Rex for 20 years now. I will share with you a little Rex story. If you guys don't know Rex Frank, he worked for MSPs throughout time. And he was a Level Platforms partner. And that's where I started cutting my teeth in the MSP space. And he left Level Platforms for, I want to say, Enable, way back in the day. And Rex was still working for his MSP. He started an organization called C-Level Training, which basically trains MSPs on how to become better MSPs, not just around TAC, but all like different functions. And then C-Level was acquired by PAX8 a number of years ago. So we have this whole academy piece, which is all Rex and a whole bunch of amazing individuals that were MSPs, that were MSP business owners, those kinds of things that are all doing training and education. Anyway, my first day, my first conference at Level Platforms, I didn't understand RMM. I barely understood MSP. And we get to this conference and Rex Frank is checking in at the hotel, and Dan Wensley, my boss, turns to me and goes, "You see that guy over there? He just left Level Platforms, went over to Enable, go win him back." And I looked at Dan and I said, "I know nothing about any of this. What are you talking about?" And he goes, show me you can do this." So I go over to Rex and I'm like, you know, Mr. Frank, my name is Rob. I started with Level Platforms. And he basically, I mean, Rex is the nicest guy in the world. He would never curse you off, but he basically said, "Just leave me alone. I'm not interested in talking to you or talking to your work or switching back or anything like that." And I almost quit. I almost left the MSP space and went back to finance at that particular moment, all because of Rex Frank. Yeah, because I was like, man, this sucks. This totally sucks losing business. But fortunately, I didn't, got through it. And now Rex and I get the privilege of working together. But you're absolutely right, Keith. Phenomenal guy.
I'll tell you my Rex Frank story. It surprised me. We were at a conference. We were at an exchange event, and Oli was there and Kevin was there. And Rex stood up in the room and said, "There's someone here that I'd like to thank for having a big influence on my career." And I thought, of course, be Oli. And it was me. And I went, whoa. I mean, I'm going like he never worked for me. I'm just like this fringe guy. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And
it's good. A lot of good people in the industry, which
Phenomenal.
I think that's part of the challenge, Rob. Like, we know that, you know, I'm sure you have some metric somewhere of the 100% of the possible people in what we classify as the IT channel. I like to call it the sandbox. Very small percentage actually shows up to the events that we all go to.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Amazing how small it is.
You're absolutely right. Let's not share too much of that with our marketing teams because we don't want to lose our budgets. However, you're absolutely right. But you know, that at the same time, it's an amazing opportunity when you finally get to one of these events and then find a bunch of green fields. And you know, it's also, you know, we have not, and there's always this constant concern because there is no way to figure out how many MSPs there are in the world. Because there's no SIC code
Very
or
long range. It's
number,
like 80 to 170 or something. It's some
right.
crazy.
And every analyst has got a sense of where it is, but nobody's actually ever kind of like gotten to that point. So it's kind of a fluffy, weird kind of, my best guess is, and not only that, but how you define MSP. You know, how, like if you define how I've always kind of outlined MSP is you provide tier 1 support to your end user and you provide the billing to your end user. And recurring billing. And in my mind, if you're doing those two things, you're a managed service provider. Well, you know, we're starting to expand a lot of these organizations into the Asian market. Well, they don't call that MSP over there, they call it SI. So now all of a sudden you got, how many SIs are there in the world? And have they ever been factored into, you know, how big this market actually is? So, you know, there is a bigger world than we've actually seen, just as you said, and we're starting to see more and more of that as, you know, I think as we're coming through the pandemic, as the business model's getting better, as revenues continue to stay solid, those kinds of things.
by the way, just I never ever went to a DentalCon.
Why?
Really?
Why are you telling me this? Are
I
you,
just-
you trying to hurt my feelings?
It sounds like
No, I just never.
sounds like he wants to get to PAX8 Beyond. That's what I heard.
Yeah, there's years I don't go to events. When you brought that up, I just thought that there's guys I see at every event, and there's years
I see you at every event. What are you telling me? You're not going to every single event. You just don't go to my events.
Well, that's because I'm a stalker, but no.
Oh boy.
I go when I'm like, if I'm invited to speak or make a presentation, but that was the only reason I was at like ConnectWise and stuff.
Well, little shout out to John Fry on the show. Thanks for popping in there, John. New at PAX8, by the way. If you don't know John.
Yep.
Added to the good team over there. Thanks for chatting in. Rob, a lot of people struggle, and even now, and you know, I'm going to say something you probably heard 1,000 times in the last 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. Hey, if things are going south, why am I going to spend my time out of the office, you know, going to that, you know, PAX8 Beyond, for example, and not just conserve my dollar, sit behind the screen and hope that the banking system doesn't collapse on me. I don't know. Like, I say that with, you know, kind of in jest, but it's kind of a thing, right? Like, we've heard 2023 could be a financial problem for everyone.
Yeah.
And like some people have a hard time leaving their business. Like how many times did you see somebody walk out of a session on whatever and they're out in the lobby with,
Oh,
cell phones
100%.
like this, and it happens everywhere. So like, what's your best advice to somebody who, maybe is like, nah, don't want to spend the time or the money?
100% totally understand. And it is tough. There is no doubt. There's a lot of things that we do in life that are just easy and easier. I think that, let's go back to what the root model of the value of what an MSP does. And Keith mentioned this. It's not about the technology that's in your stack. It's not even about the type of services that you actually provide, or even the price of those services. It goes back to the quality of what it is that you're doing. And in essence, the biggest value that an MSP has is the knowledge that they have inside their brains. The amount of information that you've got is well ahead of what the average person is, well ahead of what an average in-house IT person is, and potentially even well ahead of what your competitor has. You don't learn that sitting at home. I think that the greatest way or the greatest opportunity to learn these types of things is to actually physically go to an event. And yes, a lot of us are introverts and don't like being around other people. And we just went through this massive pandemic and everybody is scared of shaking hands. And I get all those objections and the cost of doing things. But I will share with you, I had a wonderful moment in Cancun just recently at the Nerdio's user conference.
I heard it went down really well, actually.
Such a great event. And what happened was, first day, I sit down at a table and I've got a gentleman from New York City that MSP business owner that I've never met before. I have a gentleman from south of London, England, MSP business owner who I have never met before. And then another gentleman sat down. He was an MSP business owner out of Melbourne, Australia, who I have met before and know quite well. And we just started shooting the talk. And by what happened was, I'm off doing my thing, and these guys are all going to the same thing. By the end of 3 days, they were sitting around like best friends of all time. And you've got 3 MSPs from each corner of the earth, literally. And they are all comparing notes. They're talking about technology. They're talking about what keeps them up at night. They're talking about how they've solved some of these problems. And these are experiences you would never get if you never left your office. They really aren't. These are experiences that you're never going to get by sitting around reading articles, if you even take the time to do that. These are the only opportunities that you get are the ones where you're going to network yourself. You're going to find new vendors. You're going to talk to people that are going to inspire you. You're going to talk to people that are going to piss you off. But the key about it is that there's no greater way of learning from a fire hose than going to a physical event and actually talking to individuals that are there. You will find your best friend, and you will also find a million other great things that you can be walking away with. And I've seen it over and over and over again, which is why we continue to invest in these things, which is why the MSP Initiative even exists, because these are the things that we all need to do in order to make sure that we stay relevant and continue to grow. Except Keith.
I also think we need to learn how to navigate our vendors. I have a personal bugaboo where people think vendors are there to buy you drinks and dinner when they're there to help enhance my business. And I think that's a different topic. But I just had a conversation. I used my connection with Rex because I had to navigate PAX8 for a complex SQL enterprise long-term government license. And you're going we do these things like every 3 years in my business, and you guys do it every day. But where it comes back to the conference is, I had that relationship where I can call someone and say, I don't know who the hell in your organization knows how to do this, but I know you have somebody, and they can get you the right people. Otherwise, I could have spent 3 days making phone calls, landing on the right desk.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. Which is why Keith is going to start going to events that he's not necessarily being paid to go to.
Yeah. Sounds like he's going to go to PAX8 Beyond. What are the dates for that, Rob?
George, can I travel like you? Do I get the limo in the first class?
Maybe I'll fly to your place so we can go to the airport together and make sure that we both get on the plane. What do you think?
Hell, I want a limo in first class. How do you guys score in this stuff? I'm not getting it.
Alec gets it. His employee, I see him on Facebook. I go, what do you put George in steerage and you fly in the front of the plane and sit in the lounge?
Because I don't care. That's what it is. I don't like, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, just get me there. I'm more concerned about getting through security than I am about where I'm sitting on the plane. Let's be honest.
Knowing George as well as I do, I'm pretty sure Alec is probably paying for those things out of his own pocket.
That's not true.
Really?
No, I know exactly how much the company credit card spends on Alec travel every year. I know the number by heart. I could tell you the last 3 years average. There's lots of commas and zeros in there.
So I would suggest anybody out there looking for a job that likes to travel first class, I think you got to give George a call.
I think so too.
All I know is the day before Alec came to work for me, I said, "So what do you like to do?" He was like, "I like to travel." I was like, "No problem. We'll make that happen." Little did he know that like the first year was like 178,000 miles. So
Yeah, fair. No, we do spend a lot of time on the road, and we definitely. I mean, I'm at the point too where I just hate being stuck in the back, but you know, budget's budget.
Hey, George, I got to wait for you to get through TSA without getting
go
hit.
for it.
So somebody mentioned it earlier, but you do try wearing a tie as an experiment, but you can't
I'm going to do this.
You can't just put the tie on just before you go, because if you never wear a tie, you're not going to look comfortable when you're wearing it. So you have to wear it for like a week beforehand so you get used to it. And there's a trick to it. Don't keep the top button unbuttoned so that you can breathe. And it's a different experience going through life when you're wearing a tie. I mean, I can walk into the bank in a t-shirt and they're like, yeah, back of the line's over there. I walk in a tie, they're like, hey, sir, come over here. Let's take care.
You know what, Bruce? We're gonna experiment. I'm gonna do it because I have many opportunities, right? Stay tuned. We'll see if it works. I'll let you know.
You gotta wear a tie for a little bit so you get habituated to it.
I got you. Do I do a bow tie, regular tie? I mean,
a regular tie, undo the top button and just drop it down a little bit so you can breathe, but you still look dapper.
It has to be a dress shirt. Don't put a tie on your golf shirt, George.
I wore my Cowboys leather jacket.
I was going to say a non-Eagles
right into the airport.
Non-Eagles tie. Yeah, not like Keith.
That's how it works. I wore a Cowboys leather jacket, clear, plain. The chauffeur took care of the luggage. It works, George. Trust me.
All right, guys. I'm not joking. I'm going to do it. Don't you worry. Stay tuned. You're going to hear all about it. Somebody popped in and asked, where can I find more information about PAX8 Beyond? Well, I was going to get to that, but since we're there, I'm going to share the link right here. It's PAX8Beyond.com. Surprise.
I went to it yesterday and I don't know if it was like it didn't show any agenda or registration.
So the agenda's right here. So you can click here.
Is it? Maybe it didn't work for me.
Looks like yep, here's the agenda. Looks like it's mobile formatted, so this is going to look good on your cell phone.
We are still playing around with the agenda too, by the way. So don't take this for gospel, but I wanted to make sure we got at least the guts of the content out.
Yeah, and I think
I just want to get the booking done because that.
I think they're still early bird, right? Yeah, look.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, we are going to have a laser beam like pointing into the sky outside the Gaylord in Denver.
Yes, this thing, right? It's going to come from the sky, the Elon Musk satellite beam. So go to PAX8Beyond.com if you want to learn more. I'll be there. Got to be there. Got to be at the first one, definitely.
I will go under one condition.
Go ahead.
I buy your drinks, Rob. I'm tired of you throwing down the credit card.
He's not going to let you do that. Forget that.
How about a drink?
Okay, we'll do that.
All right, deal. Thank you, Keith.
Okay, there we go. I think we have a win. Brad Gross, what's up, buddy?
I didn't actually have a question. I was just trying to agree with buying the drink thing. That's where I was.
Oh, you're going to buy Rob Ray a drink too?
I'll buy anyone a drink.
I'll buy George, Rob, and Brad.
As long as no one cares that my drink will have like an umbrella sticking out of it or something. I'm pretty secure. It's
all right,
fun.
Rob, I can't help it. These guys keep on talking about it. What? Yeah,
I actually don't drink.
Conference aside, meaning that you're hosting the conference and you're paying the bill at the end. Take that off the shelf for a minute. What's the biggest bar tab you ever racked up?
Including dinner or not including dinner?
Not including dinner.
Not including dinner. Probably Vegas. And I'll be honest, I do think that there was a little bit of scamming going on from the bar where they have a tendency to throw, because like you take a whole bunch of people out to entertain them. And it's really hard to keep track, especially about hours after hours after hours. But I looked at the bar tab afterwards, and I know there were drinks on there that nobody from my group ordered. That being said, sometimes you get stuck with that stuff. I want to say biggest bar tab. I mean, outside of, because generally, I own the budget for these conferences, so like the bar tab for something like a former DataCon or a Beyond is probably going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of alcohol. Beyond that, I'm going to say, I don't know, probably a healthy 7-8 grand, easy.
Okay, now everybody knows, right? When they find Rob at the bar, that's where the numbers can get to.
Oh, yeah, but I'm not interested in going there each and every time. I'd lose my job for sure.
100%.
I'll
Let me
bring the cigars though.
There you go. That's your jam.
That's my job.
Let me throw one wrinkle out there before we get to the end of this. The international scene varies widely between regions, right? I know you say Canada is one of the most underserved markets, or the UK versus Ireland versus Nordics versus the rest of Europe versus Australia versus New Zealand versus Asia. I mean, these are all wildly different areas. How do you build the strategy for that?
It depends on what it is that you're trying to do. For a lot of American organizations, and by the way, the US tends to lead the way in managed services, and I apologize for anybody that is non-American that is on this call that would argue with me. I'll have that argument all day long. As a Canadian, I hate admitting that America's ahead of us at anything, but they are at a lot of different things, including the managed services piece. So a lot of American organizations will tend to focus on English-speaking markets first. And that's why you see a lot of managed services and relatable managed services in the UK. George, you were just there, so you saw it firsthand. I'm sure the conversations were no different than you've ever had in even your home state.
I would say 98% the same. And then there's like a little bit of like localization for sure.
Maybe with the government or something like that, there's some regulations or something along those lines. So you tend to focus on those. Australia, New Zealand, obviously low hanging fruit. Southeast Asia is very easy to do business in because they do predominantly speak English. Netherlands, Nordics, very similar as well. So you tend to have a lot of success there. Once you start getting into France, Germany, Italy, Eastern Europe, you start getting into, then you like the other dodgy parts of Asia are a little bit more difficult just because of the way in which organizations work there. But there's more than enough business between, those at least English speaking markets now to focus on those. And I think that's kind of where that's why you've seen a lot of growth coming from managed services in those areas. But again, we're starting to see expansion into some of the others. We are making investments at PAX8 into places like Thailand, Vietnam. We're starting to see growth in those types of areas. Germany has been a very, very good market and continues to grow, and there's going to be even bigger and better opportunities as time goes on. But yeah, it's all about the adoption of managed services in the SMB space, and they're all at different stages in their journey towards MSP.
100%. So Bruce, real quick, you asked on the last session, we said, hey, there's conversation about like the government forcing MSPs to get licensed in order to do that business and that kind of thing. So I actually did ask a ton of people about this because I promised you I would. And like, it's not exactly the way it was presented in the last call.
Yeah.
Effectively, what's happened is, surprise, surprise, the insurance industry and the government got together, and you can't get insured as an IT services provider unless you meet the government's criteria around this cyber, like they call it cyber essentials, right? You have to do like 7 or 8 things in order to say that you're cyber essentials compliant.
Are we talking about the US?
We're talking about UK, because I was just over there. So basically what they said was the government put out a set of guidelines, just like CISA would. And they said, here are 7 things you have to do to have cyber essentials compliance. And when you go to apply for insurance for your MSP, they ask you to produce the documentation that you have followed the steps. And if you haven't, you can't get insurance. So like effectively, it feels like you're being licensed. It's not formal like that, but they're literally said, and they did it together clearly. If you don't do these 7 things, don't even apply. We will just decline you from the beginning.
Australia's been doing that for 6 years now. Canada's got some pretty heavy regulations around that as well. Has been for a while.
I could tell you, and I think a little different, consulting with California legislators, when they found out, when the discussion came, there'll be a license fee. I tell everyone, it's done. I don't even care what the criteria is. Once the legislators found out we could make some money and charge people, I go, they're going to do something. And the comment was, we charge people to have a dog. And I'm going like, that once I was sitting in the meeting, they were talking about all the requirements and blah, blah, blah. And someone said, well, there's a licensing fee. You saw every legislator light up. Another another tax that's not a tax that we don't have to get a vote on to get. And I think once that door opens, it's going to happen.
I think these governments, just like states do, copy each other. So if something's coming, Rob said if it started in Australia and the UK adopted it and Canada adopted it, likely something's going to happen here at some point. That being said, Rob, I've had this long streak of people just giving out their cell phone number. I'm not asking you to do that, by the way. But like at the end of these sessions, I've had now like 3 or 4 people in a row just say, yep, here's my number. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. But if people wanted to get a hold of you, Rob, for anything, they had a question, they wanted to pick your brain, they're looking for advice, or maybe they're, trying to be Sandy and want to make sure that, you have a special space at the bar for him when he comes to PAX8 Beyond, how do they find you?
Well, Sandy's already got my cell phone number, but he continues to use Facebook to communicate with me. I'm not sure why. I think it's because I still have read receipts on Facebook, so he knows whether I'm ignoring him or not. I'm on all the different social media platforms. Don't hesitate to reach out to me on any of those. My cell phone number is 203-939-8303. So there you go. Texting is the best way to get a hold of me, believe it or not. And then of course my email, rrae@pax8.com. So rrae@pax8.com is the easiest way. And Sandy just texted me. Yeah, otherwise love to hear from everybody or anybody, anything you need. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. Super happy to do it.
Thank you for coming on. I know you're busy. I know you just got back from Colorado. You may still be there. Looking forward to PAX8 Beyond, pax8beyond.com. Surprisingly, the man gave out a cell phone number. And yes, we recorded this session. So if you want to rewind, you'll have it. Thank you very much, Rob.
My pleasure, George. Thanks again. Appreciate everybody.
Appreciate you. For everyone else, this session was recorded. You'll find it at mspinitiative.com a little bit later on today. Definitely check out PAX8 Beyond. And can't wait to see you guys in person somewhere along the journey. Otherwise, back here Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Thank you very much for joining. Catch you on the next one.